Today, I want to show you a tool that I use in almost every organizational engagement that I have the opportunity to participate in. It is a simple 2 by 2 matrix, and yet it has a way of making leaders go really quiet when they look at it and really helps us diagnose what's going on with your team. So, before I show you the matrix, I want to remind you that it is based on this formula that I use in all of my work: clarity times connection equals commitment. That in order to get that commitment that we're looking for from every single member of our organization, that we need both clarity and connection. And this matrix is going to show you what happens when we have some of that, but not all of it. When I put this up on the screen, most of you will immediately be able to picture which quadrant your team is in. And that may or may not make you happy. So let's look at the matrix. So when we look at the matrix, it maps these two variables from the equation. Clarity, how clear is your team on expectations, priorities, their role, and connection, how strong is the relational trust between the manager and the team member. When you put these two dimensions together, you get 4 distinct states of team commitment. And each one has a very different feel, a different set of symptoms, and a different path forward, a different thing that we need to focus on. So today, I'm going to walk you through all 4 quadrants and give you a quick story for each one and hopefully show you what it takes to move your team toward that top right quadrant of commitment, the one that actually produces the best results. We're going to start with that bottom left quadrant. It's called confusion. Confusion is low clarity and it's low connection. And what this looks like is confusion, dropped balls, low morale, high turnover, people doing their own version of their job. When I think about this quadrant, I think about this team that I worked with where people had joined the organization haphazardly. Sometimes jobs were created just because somebody wanted to hire a friend. And so not every job had a really clear job description. And the manager was there because somebody had asked them to take on this role, but they were never really emotionally available. They were never really in it with the team. And so a lot of the team members didn't necessarily know how their job connected to anything going forward in the organization. The manager didn't really build relationships with anybody on the team. And so it's definitely a little bit chaotic and a lot of confusion. The key insight to recognize here is that confusion in the workplace is rarely caused by bad people. Most of the people on this team and in this organization were high quality, kind, loving, hardworking people who were in a situation that didn't really bring out their best. They didn't really know what was expected of them. They didn't really have any buy-in to the organization or the leader. And so that leadership environment never really gave them what they needed to succeed. So if you happen to be in that quadrant right now, in a workplace where things feel confused, most of the time it's really easy to look at the people and go, well, perhaps that person isn't a committed person. We tend to blame it on the people. But a lot of times it really is the environment. And the way that we move out of that environment is we start with clarity. Without clarity, you cannot build connection. You cannot build connection on a foundation of confusion. So if there is this level of confusion, you have to start by making sure that you set the expectations, that everybody understands what the purpose of the team is, how the things they're doing on a regular basis lead to the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And even through those conversations, you're going to start to build some of that connection. And then you're going to lean more into the connection side of it. But to move out of confusion, we've got to start with clarity. Let's talk about quadrant number 2. This is that compliance quadrant. There's a lot of clarity, but there's a low connection. What does that look like? It looks like people doing exactly what they are asked to do and not one thing more. There is usually not a lot of initiative. There's not a lot of discretionary effort. People are not going, oh, that looks like it needs to be done, so I'll just take care of it. Not a lot of loyalty, People are not necessarily going to stay late or do anything beyond what is expected of them. When I think about this, I think about an organization that I am connected to that has crystal clear expectations and SOPs. Everything is documented. There are detailed job descriptions. People have regular performance reviews, but the manager, the leader of this organization, tends to lead a little bit more with manipulation and sarcasm rather than connection. And people leave this organization on a regular basis. There is not a lot of loyalty. If somebody finds a better job somewhere, they're going to do it because when they don't meet expectations, the leadership structure tends to be punitive rather than supportive. Expectations are clear, but people do not feel seen. They do not feel like they get to bring their gifts to the table. And so you get compliance. Compliance is a floor, not a ceiling. And by that, I mean it's the baseline. You've got people doing the bare minimum of what's expected of them, but you're not getting anywhere close to their very best. This also means your organization can't really grow very effectively. How do you move out of compliance? You move out of compliance by focusing on connection. The clarity infrastructure is there. And in fact, sometimes we almost have to dial back the clarity just a tiny bit and give people some room to explore their gifts and to see what they can do in an environment where there is a little bit more wiggle room. It requires making sure that the leader or the manager understands the purpose and the reason behind connection and is willing to build those relationships and figure out how to talk to people and how to build those deeper connections. There's a significant investment in the relational layer. And sometimes that might even be dialing back the clarity and the expectations just a tiny bit for a minute until you've built those relationships. Let's look at quadrant number 3. I like to call this quadrant the comfort quadrant. There's a lot of connection and there's not a lot of clarity. Most of us have been in organizations like this. People have a good time working there. There's great vibes. People love to have coffee with each other. They visit a lot, but priorities are fuzzy. Results are soft. And the same conversations keep happening without resolution. So when you get to that point in a team and organization where you feel like you're having the same conversation over and over again, but nothing is happening, that is a clear sign that comfort might be the thing. When I think about a team that was living in comfort, I think about a team that genuinely cared about each other. They enjoyed the people, but they didn't really have a lot of clarity on how what they were doing affected the bigger organization. So they pretty much just hung out together and did a few things here and there, right? They didn't necessarily focus on the values of the organization or where the organization is going in the future. And in particular, the leader of the team that I'm thinking about didn't ever want to ruin the vibe. So he very much avoided all hard conversations. There were very few conversations about performance or priorities because he didn't want to upset anybody or make people feel bad. So when you quit having any conversations about performance, expectations, priorities, you slide into comfort and people may feel happy, but they are not actually getting much done. How we move out of this is we bring in clarity without abandoning the warmth. Brené Brown is famous for saying that clarity is kindness. I truly believe that when we bring clarity with some warmth and with connection behind it, we don't have to lose that connection piece, that relational piece. We bring in that accountability in a way that helps people feel more productive. People love to contribute to something meaningful. And so clarity allows people to see where what they're doing can contribute going forward for the organization. So when we bring clarity in, but we maintain the warmth of connection, we frame structure as the thing that protects the culture, not threatens it. We can take an environment that is comfortable and make it a truly committed, high producing place. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think the comfort quadrant is sometimes the trickiest because it feels good. And we don't want to mess with anything that feels good. But as a leader, if you're living in this quadrant, your team is not getting anywhere near the results that they are capable of. And so adding that clarity back in will change the results of what your team is doing. Now, let's look at this top quadrant. When the formula is working, when we have high clarity, when we have high connection, and we get this commitment. What this looks like is people who know what they're doing, why it matters, and feel genuinely invested. Not because they have to, but because they want to. People who have the clarity of knowing what they're doing and how it matters to the organization and the relationships that cause them to want to work for the people that they are being led by, do things above and beyond because it matters. I think about a team that I worked with that came to me when they had a leader who was very much leading from a compliance place. And that leader ended up leaving just at the point they had lost a couple of people. They had several people who were job searching. And the new leader came in and brought that team back from the edge. They came in and moved out of that place of compliance by building deep relationships with each people. This was a nonprofit organization. And so what they did really mattered. And they knew already why what they did mattered, that they didn't have that relationship capital to really go above and beyond for the organization. When that shift took place, it made a huge difference in the commitment level of everybody. The key insight here is this is not rare and it is not magical. It is daily effort on the part of the leader. It is a result of intentional, sustained investment in both clarity and connection. It is finding that balance of having both of those. Leaders in this quadrant consistently clarify before they delegate and connect before they correct. I want to say that again because I think that's really important. Leaders consistently clarify before they delegate and connect before they correct. When you're doing those things, it changes a big difference. So let's one step for each of these. If your team is currently in confusion, I want you to have one clarity conversation this week. Just define what success looks like for your team for one key priority this week. If you are living in compliance, I want you to do one genuine check-in about the person, not about the tasks. Pick one person on your team and do one genuine check-in and see what happens. If you're living in comfort, I want you to have one honest conversation about the gap between energy and results. One conversation that just helps people move beyond this is just fun to this work matters. And if you are living in that commitment quadrant, I want you to protect it. I want you to make sure that you're continually investing in both clarity and connection and identify, is there one thing, is there something that might erode where you are right now or start to mess with your team? And how can you address that proactively? The goal is not to just be in that commitment quadrant once for a few minutes. The goal is to build practices that keep you there, that keep clarity and connection going all the time. So what I would love to invite you to do, tell me in the comments what quadrant you recognize the most. What quadrant are you living in right now or have you been in recently? Tell me about it. And I would love to talk to you about how we might get more of your organization in that commitment quadrant more of the time.